The red dot appeared on his forehead like a death sentence written in laser light. Nora Vale saw it first, a tiny crimson point dancing across the face of a stranger in a flawless tuxedo, standing 20 feet away in a ballroom full of Miami's elite. Her exhausted mind processed what her eyes couldn't deny. Someone was about to blow this man's head off, right here, right now, surrounded by crystal chandeliers and champagne fountains. She had 3 seconds to decide. 3 seconds to stay invisible, stay safe, stay poor, or step into the crosshairs and change everything. If you're ready to discover how one desperate choice pulled a waitress into a world of power, danger, and impossible love, stay with me until the end. And when you finish, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city. I want to see how far Nora's story reaches across the world. Trust. The Bellamy Hotel's crystal ballroom glittered like the inside of a diamond, and Nora Vale moved through it like a ghost nobody bothered to notice. "More champagne, table 7, hissed Margaret, the head server, shoving a fresh tray into Nora's aching hands. "And for God's sake, smile. These people paid $20,000 a plate." Nora forced her face into something resembling pleasant and lifted the tray, feeling the familiar burn in her shoulders. 6 hours into her shift, 2 more to go. Then the bus ride home to her studio apartment with the broken air conditioning and the landlord who'd started leaving eviction warnings under her door. 3 months behind on rent. 3 months of choosing between electricity and eating. She'd taken this gala job because it paid double. $200 for 8 hours of carrying drinks and pretending to be invisible while Miami's wealthiest congratulated themselves on their charity. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd served at least 40 people tonight who spent more on their shoes than she made in a month. Table 7 materialized ahead, a cluster of men in tuxedos that probably cost more than her car, back when she'd had a car. She approached with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd learned to be furniture with a pulse. "Champagne, gentlemen?" They didn't even glance at her. One of them, silver-haired and wearing enough cologne to choke a horse, grabbed a glass without acknowledgement. Another was mid-sentence about a yacht he'd just purchased. Nora moved on, weaving between tables, refilling glasses, collecting empties. The ballroom was enormous, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Biscayne Bay, where yachts bobbed like toys in the dark water. A live orchestra played something classical and expensive-sounding. Everywhere she looked, silk, diamonds, power. And then she saw him. He stood near the windows, slightly separated from the main crowd, talking to an older man with sharp features. The stranger was tall, dark-haired, maybe mid-30s, wearing a tuxedo that fit him like it had been painted on. But it wasn't his looks that caught her attention, though he was striking in a way that made her breath hitch for just a second. It was his stillness. In a room full of performative laughter and animated conversation, he looked like a panther in a petting zoo, entirely too dangerous for the setting, barely pretending to belong. His eyes swept the room constantly, never settling, always cataloging. Even from across the ballroom, Nora could sense something predatory about him. Not her business, not her world. She turned away, heading back toward the service entrance for another tray. That's when she saw the red dot. At first, her exhausted brain didn't process it. Just a small point of red light dancing across the stranger's forehead as he tilted his head slightly, listening to his companion. It flickered, steadied, moved with his breathing. Laser pointer? Some kind of projection? And then her mind made the connection that turned her blood to ice. Sniper scope. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Someone, somewhere in the darkness beyond those massive windows or hidden in the shadows of the ballroom itself, had a rifle trained on this man's head. The red dot was a targeting laser, and she was watching someone's final seconds before move, do something, scream, but her throat locked up, her feet froze, because the rational part of her brain was screaming a different message. Not your problem, not your fight. You can't afford to be a hero. The man laughed at something his companion said, completely oblivious to the death sentence hovering between his eyebrows. 3 seconds, her instincts told her. Maybe less. Nora's body moved before her mind could catch up. She dropped her tray, heard the crash of crystal shattering behind her, the gasps of surprise, and launched herself across the open floor. Her sensible server shoes slipped on the polished marble. She caught herself, kept moving, closing the distance between her and the stranger with the red dot painting his face. He turned at the commotion, his eyes, dark, sharp, intelligent, finding hers with an expression of mild surprise that would have been almost funny if she weren't running toward him like a lunatic. His companion started to step forward, hand moving inside his jacket. Gun, he's got a gun. But Nora was already there. She grabbed the stranger's hand, his skin warm, his fingers strong, and pulled him toward her with more force than she knew she had. He moved with her, his reflexes faster than should be possible, his body turning into hers as she whispered against his ear, loud enough to be heard over her hammering heart. "Dance with me like I'm your wife if you want to live." Then she was pressing against him, one hand in his, the other on his shoulder, forcing him into the basic frame of a waltz just as the orchestra swelled into a new piece. She stepped, and miraculously, he moved with her, away from the windows, away from the clear line of sight, into the crowd of other dancers who'd taken to the floor. "What?" he started, his voice a low rumble she felt more than heard. "Don't talk, don't look. There was a laser sight on your forehead." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Red dot. Sniper. Someone was about to paint the walls with your brain." She felt him go rigid against her, his hand tightening on hers. But to his credit, or maybe because he was exactly as dangerous as he looked, he didn't panic, didn't spin around, didn't stop moving. Instead, he adjusted his grip, taking the lead properly, and swept her deeper into the crowd of dancers with smooth, practiced movements. "You're certain?" His voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that came from having been shot at before. "Red laser dot, center of your forehead, steady aim. I'm a waitress, not a special forces operative, but I've watched enough movies to know what that means." "What's your name?" The question was so absurd given the circumstances that she almost laughed. Nora Vale. And you're welcome, by the way." "Thank you, Nora Vale." He spun her, and she caught a glimpse of his face. Strong jaw, dark eyes that missed nothing, a mouth set in a grim line. "My name is Luca DeSantis, and you just saved my life." The name meant nothing to her, should it have? "Great. Can we maybe move toward somewhere with more walls and fewer windows?" "Already on it." He was guiding them across the dance floor with subtle precision, never breaking the rhythm, never drawing attention. To anyone watching, they were just another couple dancing. But Nora could feel the tension in his frame, the coiled readiness, the way his eyes never stopped scanning. "Your companion," Nora said. "The man you were talking to, Lorenzo, he's fine. He'll have already notified my security." Security. Of course he had security. Men who got targeted by snipers at charity galas usually did. They reached the far side of the ballroom near a service corridor Nora knew led to the kitchens. Luca turned them one final time, then released her hand and stepped back, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her feel suddenly, acutely visible in a way she hadn't been in years. "Stay close to me," he said, and it wasn't a request. Before she could respond, 3 men in tuxedos materialized around them. They moved with the same predatory grace as Luca, and Nora's exhausted mind finally processed what she should have realized immediately. These aren't party guests. "Mr. DeSantis." The closest one, tall, built like a linebacker, with a scar running through his left eyebrow, spoke quietly. Lorenzo confirmed the threat. "We're sweeping now. The shot didn't come. The target moved." "Thanks to Miss Vale here." Luca gestured to Nora, and suddenly all 3 men were looking at her with expressions she couldn't quite read. Surprise? Suspicion? "She saw the laser sight and pulled me out of the line of fire." Scarface's eyes narrowed. "How did you—" "Lucky," Nora interrupted, because she didn't like the way he was looking at her, like she was a problem to be solved. "I happened to be looking at the right angle, saw the red dot, and reacted. That's it. No conspiracy, no ulterior motive, just a waitress who watches too many action movies." "We need to move you, sir," another of the men said, this one shorter, stockier, with the kind of face that looked like it had stopped a few too many punches. "Vehicles ready at the south entrance." "Not yet," Luca's voice carried absolute authority. "First, I want confirmation. Sweep the perimeter, find me the shooter's position, and check the security footage. I want to know if anyone left the building in the last 5 minutes." The men dispersed without another word, melting back into the crowd like sharks into deep water. Luca turned back to Nora, and she suddenly became aware that they were standing very close together, that his hand was still resting lightly on her lower back, that he smelled like expensive cologne and something darker, more dangerous. "You should go," she said, taking a step back. "I mean, if someone just tried to kill you, you should probably leave, right? Go somewhere safe?" "Soon." His eyes never left her face. "First, I need to know why you did that." "Why I what? Saved your life?" "You didn't know me. You had no reason to risk yourself. That laser sight could have been on you the moment you moved. The shooter could have taken you both out." He tilted his head slightly. "So why?" Nora opened her mouth, then closed it. Why had she? In what universe did it make sense for a broke waitress to throw herself in front of a stranger's bullet? "I don't know," she admitted. I saw it happening, and I couldn't just stand there and watch someone die, even if it got me killed too. I couldn't live with myself if I'd done nothing." Something shifted in his expression. A crack in that controlled facade, a glimpse of something that might have been respect or surprise, or both. "You're either very brave or very stupid," he said. "Probably both." She managed a shaky laugh. "Look, I'm glad you're okay, but I should really get back to work before I get fired. Margaret, that's my supervisor, is probably having an aneurysm over that tray I dropped." She started to turn away, but his hand caught her wrist, gentle but firm. "You can't go back out there." "Excuse me?" "Whoever tried to kill me tonight knows they missed. They might not know why they missed, if they saw you pull me away, if they have anyone watching inside." He left the implication hanging. Nora's stomach dropped. "You're saying I'm a target now?" "I'm saying you're a witness who interfered with an assassination attempt. That makes you either very valuable or very dangerous, depending on who's asking." His grip on her wrist loosened but didn't release. "Either way, you're not safe." "I'm a waitress," she said, hearing the edge of hysteria creeping into her voice. "I serve drinks. I don't get involved in whatever this is. I didn't sign up for this." "Neither did I, the first time someone pointed a gun at me." His voice was surprisingly gentle. "But here we are." Scarface returned, moving fast, his expression grim. "Found it. Parking garage across the street, top level. Sniper's nest, still warm. Shooter's gone, but they left the rifle. Custom job. .308 with a suppressor. Professional setup." "They wanted to make sure I knew it was intentional," Luca said, more to himself than to anyone else. "Not random, not opportunistic. A message." "Sir, we need to move now. If they're willing to hit you at a public event like this..." "I know what it means, Marcus." Luca's voice went cold. "Get the car. We're leaving, and Miss Vale is coming with us." "What?" Nora tried to pull her wrist free. "No, absolutely not. I'm not going anywhere with you." "You don't have a choice." "Like hell I don't." "They saw you." Luca's eyes bored into hers. "The shooter, or whoever was watching for them. They saw you pull me away." "Do you understand what that means?" Nora's mouth went dry. "They think I'm connected to you. Or they think you saw something that could identify them. Either way, you're a loose end, and people in my world don't leave loose ends untied." He released her wrist but didn't step back. "You saved my life tonight, Nora Vale. Now let me save yours." The rational part of her brain screamed to run, to find a cop, to call someone, anyone. But the rest of her, the part that had watched the red dot and understood death was real and coming fast, knew he was right. She was already involved, had been the moment she'd grabbed his hand. "How long?" she managed. "What? How long do I have to stay with you? In your protection, or whatever this is?" Luca's expression softened slightly. "Until I find out who ordered the hit and neutralized the threat. A few days. Maybe a week. I have a job, an apartment, bills. I'll handle it." He said it like it was nothing, like money was just another problem to throw solutions at. "Your rent, your job, whatever you need. Consider it payment for saving my life." Another of his men appeared, this one younger, with nervous energy. "Car's ready, boss, and we've got company. 2 suits from MPD just walked in asking about the disturbance." "Wonderful." Luca's jaw tightened. "Tell them I'll make a statement tomorrow. Right now, we need to move." He looked at Nora, and she saw the question in his eyes, even though he didn't ask it out loud. "Trust me, or take your chances with whoever wants me dead." It wasn't really a choice. Okay, she whispered, but I want to go on record as saying this is insane. The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. Noted. Then his hand was on her lower back again, guiding her through the service corridor with Marcus leading and two more men she hadn't seen before flanking them. They moved fast, avoiding the main hallways, taking a route that suggested Luca's people had scoped out the building before tonight. Of course they had. He doesn't go anywhere without an exit strategy. They emerged into a loading area behind the hotel. A black SUV with tinted windows idled near the service entrance, engine running. Marcus opened the back door, scanning the shadows with one hand inside his jacket. In, Luca said, and Nora climbed into the vehicle before her brain could catch up with how surreal this was. Luca slid in beside her. Marcus took the front passenger seat while another man, the stocky one from earlier, took the wheel. Two more SUVs pulled up behind them, forming a convoy. "Where are we going?" Nora asked as they pulled out of the loading area, tires squealing slightly on the turn. "Somewhere safe," Luca said. "Somewhere they can't reach you." "Your house?" One of them. Right. Because of course he had multiple houses. Nora pressed her forehead against the cool window, watching Miami's glittering skyline blur past. Somewhere out there, someone with a rifle had tried to end Luca DeSantis tonight, had maybe seen her face when she'd interfered. She thought about her apartment, small, shabby, but hers. Thought about her shift tomorrow at the diner, the lunch rush she'd have to miss. Thought about the life she'd been living just 2 hours ago, barely surviving, but at least familiar. "Hey," Luca's voice pulled her back. "You're trembling." She looked down at her hands. He was right. They were shaking, fine tremors she couldn't control. "Adrenaline crash," she said. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're in shock." He reached across the seat, and for a moment she thought he was going to take her hand. Instead, he adjusted the climate control, directing warm air toward her. "Try to breathe, slow and steady. You're safe now." "Am I?" She turned to look at him, really look at him. In the dim light of the SUV's interior, he looked older, more tired. "You still haven't told me who you are, what you are. Why someone wants you dead badly enough to take a shot in a room full of witnesses." Luca was quiet for a long moment, long enough that she thought he might not answer. Then, "I'm a businessman, Nora. I run a family enterprise in Miami, importing, exporting, investments, real estate. We've been operating here for 3 generations. That's a very polite way of saying absolutely nothing." His mouth twitched again, almost a smile. "You're not stupid." "No," she agreed. "I'm poor, I'm exhausted, and up until tonight I was invisible. But I'm not stupid. So how about you tell me the truth? What kind of businessman has professional assassins trying to kill him at charity galas?" Another long silence. Marcus shifted in the front seat, and Nora got the sense he was listening intently, even though he appeared focused on the road. "The kind who has enemies," Luca finally said. "The kind who operates in spaces where the law is negotiable, where power matters more than morality." He turned to face her fully. "You want the truth, Nora? Here it is. My family controls significant territory in Miami's underworld. Drugs, weapons, gambling, protection. We have interests in all of it. And right now, someone is trying to take what's ours." There it was, laid out plainly, no more dancing around it. "You're a mobster," Nora said flatly. "I prefer crime lord, but yes, essentially." She should have been terrified, should have demanded they let her out of the car immediately. But instead, she felt a strange, hysterical calm settling over her. "Of course you are," she heard herself say. "Of course the man I saved from a sniper is a crime lord. Because why would my life be simple? If it helps, I'm one of the less violent crime lords. Does it help? I'm genuinely asking because I don't have a reference point for this conversation." This time he did smile, quick and genuine, and completely transforming his face from dangerous to devastatingly handsome. "You're handling this better than most people would." "I'm handling this terribly," Nora corrected. "I'm just too tired and too shocked to scream. Give me a few hours in a bed, and I'll probably have a complete breakdown." "Fair enough." He settled back in his seat. "For what it's worth, I meant what I said. You'll be safe with me. I don't hurt innocent people. That's not who I am. Just guilty people? Just people who threaten what's mine." His voice went cold again. And now that includes you, whether you like it or not. You're under my protection, Nora Vale, which means anyone who touches you answers to me. It should have sounded like a threat. Instead, it sounded like a promise. Dark and absolute and strangely comforting. They drove in silence for a while, leaving downtown Miami behind, heading north along the coast. The buildings grew more spread out, the neighborhoods more exclusive. Nora caught glimpses of massive estates behind high walls and security gates. Finally, they turned onto a private road that wound up a hill overlooking the ocean. At the end, a mansion that made the Bellamy Hotel look quaint. "Welcome to Blackwater House," Lucas said as the SUV pulled through security gates that looked like they could stop a tank. "Your home for the foreseeable future." The house was modern, all clean lines and glass walls, lit from within like a jewel box. Nora could see an infinity pool reflecting the moonlight, perfectly manicured gardens, a tennis court in the distance. "I live in a studio apartment with no air conditioning," she said numbly. "I'm 3 months behind on rent. This is insane." "It's secure," Lucas said as the SUV stopped in front of the main entrance. "That's what matters." Marcus opened the door, and Lucas stepped out, then extended his hand to help Nora. She took it, his grip steady and warm, and climbed out into the warm Miami night. The front door opened and a woman emerged, late 50s, gray hair pulled back severely, wearing a crisp white blouse and black slacks. She looked like she could run a military operation and a 5-star hotel simultaneously. "Mr. DeSantis," she said crisply, "I heard about the incident. Thank God you're safe." "Thank Miss Vale, Rosa. She's the one who pulled me out of the line of fire." He gestured to Nora. "She'll be staying with us for a while. Please prepare the East Guest Suite and arrange for anything she needs." Rosa's eyes swept over Nora, taking in the rumpled server's uniform, the practical shoes, the complete absence of expensive accessories, and Nora saw the exact moment the older woman cataloged her as not his usual type. "Of course, sir, Miss Vale, if you'll follow me." "Actually," Lucas said, "give us a minute, Rosa. I need to speak with Miss Vale privately." Rosa nodded and withdrew, disappearing back into the house with military efficiency. Luca turned to Nora, his expression serious. "Last chance to ask questions. Once you walk through that door, you're in my world. You'll be safe, I promise you that. But you'll also be trapped here until I can guarantee the threat is neutralized." Nora looked up at the massive house, then back at the convoy of SUVs, the armed men standing at discreet distances, the whole elaborate security apparatus. "Who's trying to kill you?" she asked. "I don't know yet, but I'll find out. And when you do?" His smile was cold and sharp. "Then I'll remind them why my family has held power in this city for 3 generations." It should have scared her. Maybe it did. But standing there in the warm night, exhausted and terrified and somehow more alive than she'd felt in months, Nora made a choice. "Okay," she said. "Show me where I'm sleeping." Luca's expression softened. "This way." He led her through the front entrance into a foyer that belonged in a magazine. Soaring ceilings, modern art on the walls, a floating staircase that looked like it defied physics. Everything was expensive, elegant, and slightly cold. "The guest wing is upstairs," Luca said, guiding her toward the staircase. "You'll have a bedroom, bathroom, small sitting room. If you need anything, food, clothes, whatever, just ask Rosa or use the house phone. Someone will be available 24 hours. "Well, clothes," Nora repeated. "Right. I didn't exactly pack for an extended stay when I showed up to serve champagne tonight. Rosa will take your measurements in the morning and have things delivered. For tonight, you'll find basics in the closet. We keep the guest suites stocked." They reached the top of the stairs and turned down a hallway lined with more art. Luca stopped at a door halfway down and opened it, gesturing for her to enter. The small guest suite was larger than her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the ocean, now dark except for the white line of surf. A massive bed dominated the space, made up in white linens that probably cost more than her monthly rent. There was indeed a sitting area with a couch and chairs, a desk, and a door that presumably led to the bathroom. Nora struggled for words. "It's beautiful." "It's a cage," Luca said quietly. "Let's not pretend otherwise. You're here because it's not safe for you anywhere else right now. That doesn't make it less of a prison." She turned to look at him, surprised by the honesty. Why do you care? She asked. I mean, you could have just paid me off, put me in a hotel somewhere with a guard. Why bring me here? Why any of this? Luca was quiet for a moment, his dark eyes studying her face. Because you didn't hesitate, he said finally. When you saw that laser sight, you could have screamed, you could have run, you could have frozen. Instead, you put yourself in danger to save a complete stranger. That's rare, Nora. That kind of courage, that kind of instinct. It's not something I take lightly. I'm not brave, she whispered. I'm terrified. Being brave doesn't mean not being afraid. It means doing the right thing anyway. He moved toward the door, then paused. Get some rest. We'll talk more in the morning. And Nora? Yeah? Thank you. For my life. Then he was gone, closing the door softly behind him, leaving her alone in the beautiful cage with the ocean crashing against the rocks below and the weight of what she'd done finally, fully settling onto her shoulders. Nora walked to the window and pressed her palm against the cool glass. Out there, somewhere in the Miami darkness, someone wanted Luca DeSantis dead. And now, because of one impulsive choice, they might want her dead too. She should call someone. Her sister maybe, or her best friend Jenna. Let them know she was okay, that she hadn't been kidnapped. Except you kind of have been, a voice in her head whispered. Protective custody is still custody. But when she turned to look for her phone, she realized it was gone, probably dropped when she'd thrown herself across the ballroom, along with her purse, her keys, everything. She was completely disconnected from her old life. No way to reach out. No way to let anyone know where she was. The reality of it hit her like a wave. She was trapped in a mansion with a crime lord, protected from threats she didn't understand, caught in a world that had swallowed her whole in the span of a single terrified heartbeat. Nora sank onto the edge of the enormous bed and finally let herself shake, let the adrenaline drain away, let the full weight of terror and exhaustion crash over her. Tomorrow, she would figure out how to survive this. Tomorrow, she would demand answers, make plans, fight back against the tide trying to drown her. But tonight, she just let herself feel it all. And somewhere in the house below, Luca DeSantis stood in his office surrounded by his men, looking at security footage of a parking garage and a vacant sniper's nest, and began planning his response to whoever had dared to come for his life. The red dot had missed. Now it was his turn to aim back. Nora woke to sunlight streaming through windows she didn't recognize, in a bed too soft to be real, wearing clothes she didn't remember putting on. For one blissful, confused moment, she thought maybe it had all been a dream. The gala, the red dot, the crime lord with dark eyes who'd taken her to his fortress by the sea. Then she sat up and saw the ocean through the floor-to-ceiling glass, remembered everything, and felt her stomach drop. A soft knock at the door made her jump. "Miss Vale?" Rosa's crisp voice came through. "May I come in?" Yes?" The older woman entered carrying a silver tray laden with coffee, fruit, pastries that smelled like heaven. She set it on the desk with practiced efficiency, then turned to face Nora with an expression that managed to be both professional and quietly assessing. "Mr. DeSantis asked me to check on you. He's in meetings this morning, but would like to speak with you at 11, if that's acceptable." Nora glanced at the clock on the nightstand. 9:45. She'd slept almost 12 hours. "Meetings about what happened last night?" "I couldn't say, miss." Rosa's tone suggested she absolutely could say, but wouldn't. "I've taken the liberty of having some clothes delivered to your closet. They should fit reasonably well until we can arrange proper shopping. Is there anything else you need?" "My phone," Nora said. "I dropped it last night. And I should call my work. Let them know I'm not coming in." "Mr. DeSantis has already handled that. Your phone was retrieved from the hotel and is charging in the drawer here." Rosa moved to the nightstand, opened it to reveal Nora's cracked screen iPhone plugged into a charger. "As for your employment, he's contacted the Bellamy and explained you'll be unavailable for the foreseeable future. They've been compensated for the inconvenience." Of course he had, because in Luca DeSantis' world, everything could be solved with money and power. "What about my other job, the diner?" "Also handled. Your employers have been informed you're dealing with a family emergency and will return when possible. Your shifts have been covered." Nora opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. What was she supposed to say? That she didn't want him controlling her life? He'd saved her from whoever wanted him dead. This was protective custody, not a hostile takeover, except it felt like both. Thank you, she managed. Rosa nodded and moved toward the door, then paused. Miss Vale, if I may offer some advice? Please. Mr. DeSantis is a good man operating in a bad world. He has rules, principles, lines he won't cross. But the people trying to harm him don't share those limitations. Her eyes were sharp, assessing. Whatever you saw last night, whatever you interrupted, it's bigger than you realize. So when he asks you to stay close, to follow security protocols, to trust his judgment, do it. Your life may depend on it. Then she was gone, leaving Nora alone with gourmet breakfast and the weight of those words settling like stones in her chest. She showered in a bathroom that was nicer than most hotel suites, then explored the closet Rosa had mentioned. True to her word, it was now stocked with clothes, jeans, shirts, dresses, all in Nora's size, all expensive brands she recognized from window shopping but could never afford. There were shoes too, and undergarments still in packaging, and a leather jacket that probably cost more than her monthly rent used to be. She dressed in dark jeans and a simple white blouse, feeling like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. Then forced herself to eat some of the fruit and drink the coffee, which was predictably perfect. At exactly 11 o'clock, another knock came at her door. Marcus, the scarred man from last night, stood in the hallway, looking slightly less threatening in daylight, but no less dangerous. Miss Vale, Mr. DeSantis is ready for you. She followed him through the mansion, getting her first real look at Luca's world in daylight. Everything was modern, expensive, meticulously maintained. They passed other people, staff members who nodded to Marcus but didn't quite meet Nora's eyes, and more of Luca's security, men who watched her with the same quiet assessment Rosa had shown. Marcus led her to a set of double doors on the main floor, knocked once, then opened them without waiting for a response. Luca's office was all windows and dark wood, with a massive desk facing the ocean view. He stood behind it, phone pressed to his ear, wearing dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked different in daylight, less dangerous, more human. But his eyes still carried that predator's awareness, that constant cataloging of threats. He gestured for her to sit, then finished his call in what sounded like Italian, his voice low and controlled but carrying an edge that suggested the conversation wasn't going well. Finally, he ended the call and set the phone down, his attention shifting fully to Nora. You slept well? Like the dead. She winced at her own word choice. Poor phrasing, given the circumstances. His mouth twitched. How are you feeling? Confused. Trapped. Terrified. She decided honesty was her best weapon here. Also weirdly guilty about sleeping in a bed that costs more than I make in a year while someone out there wants both of us dead. The bed costs significantly more than you make in a year if it helps. It doesn't. This time he did smile, quick and genuine. Then it faded and he moved around the desk to lean against it, closer to where she sat. I need to brief you on what we learned last night, he said, and what it means for you going forward. Nora's stomach tightened. Okay. The sniper's position was professionally chosen, clear line of sight, easy escape route, minimal exposure time. The rifle was high-end, custom work, untraceable. Whoever set up that shot knew what they were doing. He paused. What they didn't know was that I'd changed my position at the last second. I was supposed to be standing 3 feet to the left, near the champagne fountain. That's where the sight was originally calibrated. But you moved. I moved, which means the shooter had to adjust, recalibrate, wait for a clean shot. His eyes met hers. That delay gave you time to see the laser sight and react. If I'd been where I was supposed to be, I'd be dead right now. The casual way he said it made her shiver. Do you know who ordered it? She asked. I have suspicions. My family, my organization, has enemies. Some old, some new. But to make a move this bold, this public? He shook his head. That's a declaration of war, and there's only one person with the resources and stupidity to try it. Who? Renato Bellini. The name came out like a curse. He runs the North Miami territory, controls the port operations we've been trying to acquire. We've been in negotiations for months, trying to find a peaceful resolution to our territorial disputes. Apparently he's decided bullets make better negotiators than lawyers. Nora processed this. So what happens now? Now I respond. Luca's voice went cold. Not with violence, not yet. But Renato needs to understand that coming for me has consequences. I'll make it clear that his operations are now under scrutiny, that his connections in law enforcement and city government are going to face pressure, that every shipment, every deal, every dirty dollar is going to be examined. Economic warfare instead of actual warfare. Exactly. I prefer it that way. Less collateral damage, more sustainable outcomes. He studied her face. But that doesn't mean there won't be violence eventually. Renato isn't the type to back down gracefully, which brings me to you. Me? We've confirmed that the hotel's security footage captured you pulling me away from the windows. That footage is now in police custody as part of their investigation into the disturbance at the gala. He held up a hand before she could speak. Don't worry, my lawyers are handling it. But it means your face is connected to mine in official records, which means Renato knows about you. The room felt suddenly smaller, the air thinner. He knows I interfered, Nora said slowly. He knows you saved my life, which makes you either leverage or a target, depending on how he wants to play this. Luca straightened, his expression serious. That's why you can't leave here, Nora. Not until this is resolved. Not until I know you're safe. How long will that take? I don't know. Weeks, maybe. Maybe longer. He moved to the windows, looking out at the ocean. I know it's not fair. I know you didn't ask for this. But you're in it now, whether we like it or not. Nora stood, moving to join him at the window. Outside, she could see Marcus and another guard patrolling the grounds, could see the high walls surrounding the property, the security cameras mounted at intervals. What would happen if I just left? She asked quietly. If I went back to my apartment, my life, pretended none of this happened? You'd be dead within 48 hours. No hesitation, no cushioning the truth. Renato's people would find you, extract whatever information they could about my security, my routines, my vulnerabilities. Then they'd kill you and leave your body somewhere I'd find it, as a message. She felt bile rise in her throat. You're serious. I'm always serious about threats to people under my protection. He turned to face her fully. You saved my life, Nora. That means something to me. It means I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe, even if you hate me for it. I don't hate you, she heard herself say. I don't understand this world. I've spent my whole life invisible, powerless, just trying to survive. And now I'm in the middle of some crime war because I made one impulsive decision? The world isn't fair. His voice softened slightly. But you're not powerless. Not anymore. You're under the protection of the DeSantis family, which means you have resources, safety, security that most people in this city would kill for. Great. All I had to do was nearly die. Welcome to my life. He said it without irony, without self-pity. Just a statement of fact. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the ocean. Then Luca's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it, his expression darkening. I need to take this. Marcus will take you back to your room, or you can explore the grounds if you want. Just stay within the security perimeter. He paused. And Nora? Thank you for not trying to run. A lot of people in your position would panic, would make stupid choices that would get them killed. You're handling this better than you think. Then he was answering his phone, switching back into that controlled, dangerous version of himself, and Marcus was appearing in the doorway to escort her out. Nora spent the rest of the day exploring her cage. The grounds were beautiful. Manicured gardens, the infinity pool she'd seen last night, a tennis court, even a small guest house near the back wall. Everywhere she went, she felt the presence of Luca's security, watching without being obvious about it. She found a library filled with books in multiple languages, a gym that looked like it belonged in an exclusive club, a home theater with seats that probably cost more than her car. Every room was perfect, expensive, empty of personal touches. It was a fortress, not a home. By evening, she was back in her room, restless and anxious. Rosa had brought dinner, some kind of pasta dish that was probably amazing but tasted like nothing because Nora's nerves had killed her appetite. She was picking at it when another knock came at her door. Come in, she called, expecting Rosa. Instead, Luca entered, still in his work clothes but looking more tired than he had that morning. He carried a tablet and what looked like a thick folder. I'm not interrupting dinner? I'm not really hungry. She set the plate aside. What's that? Your life for the next few weeks. He set the tablet and folder on the desk. Security protocols, emergency procedures, communication guidelines, everything you need to know about living here safely. Sounds thrilling. It's necessary. He opened the folder, revealing pages of dense text and diagrams. I know it seems excessive, but these protocols exist for a reason. Every person in this house follows them, including me. Nora moved to the desk, scanning the first page. It was overwhelming. Rules about where she could go, when, with whom. Codes for different types of emergencies, contact numbers for security, medical, legal support. This is insane, she muttered. This is survival. Luca leaned against the desk beside her. I've lived under these protocols my entire life, Nora. My father taught me that the difference between staying alive and getting killed is attention to detail. Following the rules. Never assuming you're safe. Sounds exhausting. It is. He was quiet for a moment. But it's also the price of the life I chose, the power I wield, the territory I control. Every advantage comes with a cost. She turned to look at him. Do you ever regret it? Choosing this life? I didn't choose it. I was born into it. His expression was unreadable. My father ran this organization before me. His father before him. I was raised to take over, to lead, to maintain what 3 generations of DeSantis men had built. But you could have walked away. Could I? He met her eyes. When you're trained from childhood to see the world as territories and enemies and power dynamics, when everyone you love is connected to the organization, when walking away means abandoning everything and everyone you've ever known? He shook his head. Maybe that's not really a choice. Nora thought about her own life. The choices poverty had stolen from her, the paths closed before she'd even known they existed. In a strange way, she understood. So you just accept it, she said. The violence, the danger, the constant threat. I accept my responsibility to the people who depend on me. The men and women who work for my organization, who feed their families with the money we provide. The communities we protect from worse predators. His voice carried conviction. I'm not a good man, Nora, but I try to be better than the alternative. What's the alternative? Renato Bellini. The name was sharp with contempt. A man who sees people as assets or obstacles, nothing more. Who'd burn this entire city if it meant consolidating power. Who has no code, no principles, no lines he won't cross. And you do? Have lines? Yes? No hesitation. I don't deal in human trafficking. I don't allow hard drugs in family neighborhoods. I don't hurt innocents to make a point. And I don't go after civilians who had nothing to do with our world. He looked at her meaningfully. Which is why Renato targeting you is such a violation. You're not part of this. You shouldn't be in danger because of me. But I am. But you are, he agreed quietly. Nora turned back to the security protocols, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on her. How long have you been doing this? Leading your organization? 8 years? Since I was 27. My father died of a heart attack, and I inherited everything, the business, the territory, the enemies. He moved to the windows, looking out at the darkening ocean. I've spent those 8 years trying to modernize, to move us toward legitimate enterprises, to reduce the violence. It's been slow, but we've made progress. Until Renato decided to skip negotiations and go straight to assassination. Exactly. His reflection in the glass was grim. He's old school, Nora. Believes power comes from fear, that strength means being the most brutal predator in the room. He saw my attempts at peace as weakness. So now you have to prove him wrong. Now I have to survive long enough to outmaneuver him. He turned back to face her. Which brings me to why I'm really here. Tomorrow night, I'm having dinner with some of my key associates. People who need to see that the assassination attempt didn't shake me, that I'm still in control. I'd like you to join us. Nora blinked. What? Why? Because Renato will hear about it. He'll know that the woman who saved my life is under my protection, living in my house, dining with my inner circle. His eyes were intense. It sends a message that I'm not hiding, not afraid, that his attempt failed so completely that I'm actually stronger for it. You want to use me as a prop? I want to show him he miscalculated. Luca moved closer. But I won't force you. If you're not comfortable, I'll understand. This is already more than I had any right to ask of you. Nora considered it. The smart move was to say no, to stay in her room, to be as invisible as possible until this nightmare ended. But when had she ever made the smart move? "What do I wear to dinner with a crime lord and his associates?" she asked. Luca's expression shifted, surprise, respect, something that might have been relief. "Rosa will help you with that. And Nora? Thank you." "Oh, don't thank me yet. I might panic and run screaming halfway through the appetizers. If you do, I promise to have excellent wine available for the screaming part." She laughed despite everything, and for just a moment the tension in the room eased. Then Luca's phone buzzed again, and the moment shattered. He glanced at the screen, and his entire demeanor changed, going cold, controlled, dangerous. "I have to go," he said. "There's a situation that needs handling. Marcus will be outside your door if you need anything." "Luca?" She wasn't sure why she used his first name, but it felt right. "Be careful." He paused at the door, looking back at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Always am," he said. Then he was gone, and Nora was alone again with her security protocols and her racing thoughts, and the growing realization that she was in far deeper than she'd understood. She spent the evening reading through the protocols, memorizing emergency procedures, trying to understand the world she'd stumbled into. Around midnight, exhausted but unable to sleep, she moved to the windows and looked out at the dark ocean. Somewhere out there, Renato Bellini was planning his next move. Somewhere, men with guns were being positioned, strategies were being discussed, violence was being prepared, and she was at the center of it all, a waitress who'd made one reckless choice and now couldn't escape the consequences. Her phone buzzed, a text from a number she didn't recognize. "Sleep well, Nora. Tomorrow you meet the family. L." She stared at it for a long moment, then typed back, "Terrifying, thanks for the heads up." His response came quickly. "You've already survived a sniper. My associates are significantly less dangerous. That's not as comforting as you think it is." "Fair point. Good night, Nora." She set the phone down, a strange warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with safety or security and everything to do with the way he'd said her name. This was dangerous, she realized, not just the crime war and the assassination attempts and the men with guns. This, whatever was starting to form between her and Luca, was maybe the most dangerous thing of all. Because it would be so easy to forget that he was a crime lord, that his world was built on violence and power, that staying here meant becoming part of something dark and complicated. It would be so easy to fall. Nora forced herself away from the window, back to the bed, back to the protocols she needed to memorize. Tomorrow she'd meet Luca's inner circle, play her part in his power games, send messages to enemies she'd never met. Tomorrow she'd step deeper into the darkness. But tonight, just for tonight, she let herself feel something other than fear. Hope was too strong a word. But maybe possibility. The thought scared her more than anything else had. The next evening, Rosa arrived with a dress that made Nora's breath catch. Midnight blue silk that hugged her curves and fell to mid-thigh, elegant without being overtly sexy, expensive without screaming it. "Mr. DeSantis selected it personally," Rosa said, helping Nora into it. "He has excellent taste. He's a crime lord who nearly got assassinated 2 nights ago. I'm not sure excellent taste is his most relevant quality." Rosa's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Perhaps not, but it helps. She did Nora's hair in a simple updo, applied subtle makeup that somehow made her look both more sophisticated and more like herself. When Nora looked in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. "You look beautiful," Rosa said simply. "Now remember, these men are Luca's most trusted associates. They're not your enemies, but they're also not your friends. Be polite, be yourself, and let Mr. DeSantis handle the politics." "What if they ask me questions?" "Answer honestly. They'll respect that more than attempted flattery." Rosa stepped back, assessing her work. "You're ready." Marcus escorted her downstairs to a formal dining room she hadn't seen before, all dark wood and crystal, with a table that could seat 20 but was set for 8. Luca stood at the head, talking quietly with 2 men Nora didn't recognize. He wore a dark suit that probably cost more than her annual salary, and when he turned at her entrance, his expression shifted in a way that made her heart skip. "Nora," He moved to greet her, his eyes traveling over her dress with clear appreciation. "You look stunning." Rosa helped. Rosa has excellent taste. He offered his arm, and she took it, feeling the solid strength beneath the expensive fabric. "Let me introduce you." The next hour was a blur of names and faces. Lorenzo, the sharp-featured older man from the gala, who shook her hand with surprising gentleness. Marco, younger than Luca, with easy charm and calculating eyes. Vincent, quiet and intense, who assessed her like she was a tactical problem to solve. And three others whose names blurred together, but whose presence radiated the same controlled danger as Luca's. They sat for dinner, courses of food Nora couldn't identify but that tasted incredible, and the conversation flowed around her. Business talk, coded language, discussions of territories and shipments and negotiations that sounded almost legitimate until you paid attention to what wasn't being said. "So, Miss Vale," Lorenzo said during a pause, his attention fixing on her with uncomfortable intensity. "Luca tells us you saved his life at the gala, that you saw the laser sight before anyone else." All conversation stopped. Every eye at the table turned to her. "I got lucky," Nora said, keeping her voice steady. "I happened to be looking at the right angle at the right time." "Luck." Marco smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Or excellent instincts." "Definitely luck. My instincts usually tell me to avoid danger, not run toward it." That got a few chuckles, some of the tension easing. "And yet you did run toward it," Vincent observed. "Toward a man you didn't know, risking your own life. Why?" Nora set down her fork, meeting his gaze directly. "Because watching someone die when you could have prevented it seemed like something I wouldn't be able to live with." "A conscience." Lorenzo's tone was unreadable. "How refreshing." "Careful, Lorenzo," Luca said mildly. "You almost sounded cynical." "I am cynical. Comes with age and experience." But his expression softened slightly. "Miss Vale, you should know that what you did, interfering with that assassination attempt, has consequences beyond what Luca may have told you. You're not just a witness now. You're a statement." "A statement of what?" "That Luca DeSantis has people willing to die for him without even knowing his name." Lorenzo's eyes were shrewd. "That's power, Miss Vale. The kind Renato Bellini doesn't have and never will." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Nora was only beginning to understand. "I didn't do it to make a statement," she said quietly. "I did it because it was right." "Even better." Luca's voice carried warmth she'd never heard before. "Genuine courage is always more valuable than calculated loyalty." The conversation moved on, but Nora felt the weight of their assessment, their judgment. These men were Luca's inner circle, his trusted advisors, his brothers in everything but blood, and they were deciding if she belonged. After dinner, as staff cleared plates and brought coffee, Marco pulled Luca aside for a quiet conversation. Nora found herself standing near the windows with Lorenzo, who studied her with the same intensity he'd shown at dinner. "You're uncomfortable here," he observed. "Is it that obvious?" "To someone who knows what to look for." He sipped his coffee. "You don't belong in this world, Miss Vale. You're too honest, too transparent. These qualities will either save you or destroy you." "Which do you think it'll be?" "That depends on how quickly you learn." His expression was surprisingly kind. "Luca is a good man in a bad business. He tries to do right, to minimize harm, to build something better than what his father left him. But he's still a crime lord, and that means making choices most people would find unforgivable." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I watched him look at you during dinner." Lorenzo's voice dropped. "And I recognized that expression. I've seen it before, on his father's face when he met Luca's mother. It's hope, Miss Vale. The possibility of something beyond this life. And hope is dangerous in our world." Before she could respond, Luca returned, his expression unreadable. "Lorenzo, stop trying to scare her." "I'm not scaring her, I'm warning her. There's a difference." But Lorenzo nodded to Nora and moved away, leaving them alone. "He means well," Luca said quietly, in his own terrifying way. "He said you're a good man in a bad business." Lorenzo has always been generous with his assessments. Luca's jaw tightened. "I'm not sure I deserve that description." "What would you call yourself?" He was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the dark ocean. "A man trying to be better than his circumstances allow. And mostly failing." The vulnerability in his voice caught her off guard. Before she could think better of it, Nora reached out and touched his arm. For what it's worth, I think you're doing better than you realize. He turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. They stood close enough that she could feel the heat of him, could smell the subtle cologne and something underneath that was just him. Nora, he started, then stopped, seeming to struggle with something. What? I need to tell you something. His voice was low, meant only for her. Renato reached out today. He wants to meet. Discuss the misunderstanding at the gala. Her stomach dropped. That's insane. He tried to have you killed. Which is why he wants to meet, to prove he didn't, to position himself as the reasonable one seeking peace while I'm the paranoid aggressor. Luca's expression was grim. It's a power play, a way to control the narrative. Are you going? I have to. Refusing would make me look weak, afraid. But I'm not going alone, and I'm certainly not going unprepared. He paused. I want you to come with me. What? No, absolutely not. Hear me out. Luca, the man tried to kill you 48 hours ago, and you want to bring me to a meeting with him? That's insane. It's strategic. His hands came up to rest on her shoulders, steady and warm. If I bring you, it shows I'm not afraid of him, that his assassination attempt was so ineffective that I'm comfortable bringing witnesses. It also protects you. He can't make a move against you without revealing his hand. Or he could just kill us both and be done with it. He won't, not at the meeting. Too public, too risky. Luca's eyes bored into hers. But I won't force you. If you're not comfortable, I'll understand. Nora wanted to scream, to run, to wake up from this nightmare. Instead, she heard herself say, When? Tomorrow night. Neutral territory, a restaurant in South Beach. Public, secure, plenty of witnesses. You're sure this is the play? No. His honesty was brutal. But I'm sure that hiding you away sends the wrong message. And in this world, perception is everything. She pulled back from his grip, needing space to think. This was crazy. Every instinct screamed to refuse, to stay safe behind Luca's walls. But Lorenzo's words echoed in her mind. Hope is dangerous in our world. Maybe that was the point. Maybe being dangerous was how you survived. Okay, she whispered. I'll go. Luca's expression shifted, relief and concern and something deeper that made her heart race. Thank you, he said. I promise I'll keep you safe. You better. I'm starting to get attached to staying alive. His laugh was quiet, genuine. Good. So am I. The restaurant Luca chose for the meeting was called Maria, an upscale Italian place on Ocean Drive where tables cost a month of Nora's old rent and the waitstaff moved like dancers through candlelit spaces. She'd walked past places like this 100 times in her server uniform, never imagining she'd actually sit inside one. Now she sat in the back of Luca's SUV, wearing another dress Rosa had selected. This one black, simple, elegant in a way that whispered money without shouting it, and tried to keep her hands from shaking. Breathe, Luca said from beside her. He looked relaxed, almost casual in his dark suit, but Nora had learned to read the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes never stopped moving. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Nice and slow. I'm fine. You're terrified. It's okay to admit it. She turned to look at him. Aren't you scared? Absolutely. The difference is I've been doing this long enough to hide it better. His hand found hers in the darkness between them, steady and warm. Listen to me, Nora. When we go in there, stay close. Don't speak unless Renato addresses you directly, and if he does, keep your answers short and polite. Don't volunteer information. Don't show fear. What if he threatens me? He won't. Not directly. He'll be charming, sophisticated, everything a civilized businessman should be. That's what makes him dangerous. He knows how to play the game. Luca's grip tightened slightly. But if anything happens, if things go wrong, Marcus and Vincent will get you out. Your safety is the priority. What about your safety? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm considerably harder to kill than I look. The SUV pulled to a stop outside Maria. Through the tinted windows, Nora could see the restaurant's elegant facade, the valet station, the beautiful people drifting in and out like they belonged in a different universe. Marcus appeared at her door, opening it with military precision. Clear, boss. His people are already inside. Table in the back. 4 men, including Bellini. Expected. Luca climbed out, then extended his hand to help Nora. Remember, you're here because you're under my protection. That makes you untouchable as long as the rules hold. And if the rules break, then I break them harder. They walked into Maria together, Luca's hand resting lightly on her lower back in a gesture that looked romantic but felt strategic. Marcus and Vincent flanked them at a discreet distance, and Nora caught glimpses of at least 2 more security personnel positioning themselves near exits. The hostess greeted Luca by name, her professional smile never wavering despite the obvious tension radiating from his security team. She led them through the main dining room, past couples sharing wine and laughter, past families celebrating something, past the normal world Nora had once inhabited, to a private section in the back. And there, at a table set for 8, sat Renato Bellini. He was smaller than Nora expected, maybe mid-50s, with silver hair slicked back and a face that would have been handsome if not for the coldness in his eyes. He wore an impeccable suit, had a glass of wine in front of him, and was smiling like they were old friends meeting for dinner. 3 men sat with him, all cut from the same cloth as Marcus and Vincent. Expensive suits hiding dangerous bodies, eyes that catalog threats with professional efficiency. Luca. Renato stood, arms spreading in welcome. My friend, I'm so glad you agreed to meet. Renato. Luca's voice was neutral, giving nothing away. You said it was important. It is. Please, sit. Renato's eyes shifted to Nora, and she felt his assessment like cold fingers on her skin. And you've brought a guest. How delightful. This is Nora Vale, Luca said, guiding her to a chair before taking his own seat. She's under my protection. So I heard. Renato's smile widened. The mysterious woman who saved your life at the charity gala. How romantic. How observant, Luca countered. I'm surprised you heard about it so quickly. One might think you had people watching the event. The words hung in the air like a thrown gauntlet. Renato's smile never faltered. I have interests everywhere, Luca. You know that. When a prominent businessman like yourself is involved in a disturbance at a high-profile charity event, word spreads. He gestured to the wine. Please, have some. It's a 2015 Barolo, quite excellent. Luca didn't touch the bottle. Neither did Nora. She'd watched enough crime shows to know better than to drink anything she hadn't seen poured. Renato noticed, and his smile gained an edge. Cautious. I respect that. Though I assure you, if I wanted you dead, poison would be far too subtle for my tastes. Then what do you want? Luca leaned back in his chair, projecting a calm Nora knew he didn't feel. You called this meeting. You said we needed to discuss the misunderstanding at the gala. So, discuss. Direct. I like that about you, Luca. Your father would dance around a subject for hours, but you cut straight to the heart. Renato poured himself more wine, savoring the ritual. The misunderstanding I reference is this persistent rumor that I was somehow involved in the attempted assassination at the Bellamy, that I hired a sniper to kill you in front of Miami's social elite. It's not a rumor if it's true. But it isn't true. Renato's voice hardened. I would never be so crude, so reckless. Public assassination at a charity gala? That's the work of amateurs or madmen, and I am neither. Then who tried to kill me? That's what concerns me. Renato leaned forward, and for a moment Nora saw something that might have been genuine worry flicker across his face. Someone is trying to start a war between our organizations, Luca. Someone who benefits from us destroying each other while they consolidate power in the chaos. Luca was silent for a long moment, studying Renato's expression. You expect me to believe you had nothing to do with it. I expect you to use that sharp mind of yours and ask who stands to gain. Renato gestured expansively. If I wanted you dead, there are a dozen ways I could accomplish it without drawing this much attention. Your morning run along the beach, your weekly visits to your mother's grave, the private elevator in your downtown office building. He paused, letting the implications sink in. I know your routines, Luca. If I wanted you gone, you'd be gone. Nora felt ice slide down her spine. The casual way he listed Luca's vulnerabilities, the intimate knowledge of his life, it was a threat wrapped in denial, a reminder of how exposed they really were.
So you're claiming someone is framing you, Luca said slowly.
I'm claiming someone is playing us both. Renato's eyes shifted to Nora again. Tell me, Miss Vale, when you saw that laser sight, did you notice anything else? Anyone watching Luca specifically? Anyone who seemed out of place? Nora's mouth went dry. Every instinct screamed not to engage, to stay silent, but Renato's attention was fixed on her now, patient and predatory. I was working, she said carefully, serving drinks. I saw the red dot and reacted. That's all. That's all? Renato's smile was knowing. A waitress who just happens to be looking at the exact right angle, at the exact right moment, to spot a professional sniper's targeting laser. And your first instinct is to throw yourself at a stranger, to dance with him, to pull him from danger. He tilted his head. Remarkable reflexes for someone who serves champagne for a living. Luck, Nora said, forcing her voice steady. Or instinct. I don't know. I just knew someone was about to die and I couldn't watch it happen. A hero! Renato's tone made the words sound like an insult. How refreshing. Tell me, does Luca pay well for heroism? Or are there other compensation arrangements? Luca's hand slammed down on the table hard enough to rattle the wine glasses. When he spoke, his voice was deadly quiet. Careful, Renato. Miss Vale is a civilian who happened to save my life. She's not part of our world, not involved in our business, and absolutely not a topic for your speculation. Protective. Renato seemed delighted. I see. Well then, let me redirect to business. The port negotiations. I'm willing to reconsider my position if you're willing to do the same. The abrupt shift in topic was clearly intentional, but Luca didn't take the bait. The port operations are non-negotiable. We've been over this. Everything is negotiable, Luca. It's simply a matter of finding the right price. Renato swirled his wine. I'm proposing a partnership instead of a takeover. We split the territory, share the revenue, avoid the bloodshed that's coming if we continue down this path. A partnership. Luca's tone was flat. After someone, maybe you, maybe not, tried to blow my head off 3 days ago. You'll forgive me if I'm skeptical. Which is why I'm proposing a gesture of good faith. Renato reached into his jacket, and instantly Marcus and Vincent tensed, hands moving toward concealed weapons. Renato froze, eyebrows raised. Easy, gentlemen, just paperwork. He withdrew a folder slowly, deliberately, and slid it across the table to Luca. The names and locations of 3 operations your organization has been trying to find for months. Illegal gambling rings that have been cutting into your territory. Consider it a peace offering. Luca didn't touch the folder. Why would you give me this? Because the alternative is mutually assured destruction. Renato's voice lost its polished edge, revealing something harder beneath. You think you're the only one with enemies, Luca? The only one dealing with ambitious subordinates and territorial challenges? I'm offering you an alliance because I'm smart enough to know that fighting you costs me resources I can't afford to lose right now. And if I refuse, then we go to war. Your people die, my people die, and whoever set up that assassination attempt at the gala sits back and watches us eliminate each other. Renato leaned back in his chair. Is that really what you want? To play into their hands? The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Nora watched Luca's face, saw the calculations running behind his eyes, the strategic analysis of every word and gesture. I'll consider your proposal, Luca said finally. But I want time to verify this information, to confirm you're acting in good faith. Reasonable. You have 1 week. Renato's smile returned. After that, I'll assume your answer is no, and we proceed accordingly. Understood. Luca stood, and Nora quickly followed. Was there anything else? Just one thing. Renato's eyes fixed on Nora again. Miss Vale, a word of advice, this world you've stumbled into. It doesn't forgive mistakes, and it doesn't offer second chances. Whatever arrangement you have with Luca, whatever protection he's promised you, remember that promises are only as good as the person making them. And in our business, everyone eventually breaks. Before Nora could respond, Luca's hand was on her arm, guiding her away from the table. They walked out of the restaurant without another word, Marcus and Vincent closing ranks around them, and didn't speak until they were back in the SUV with the doors closed and the engine running.
Then Luca let out a breath that sounded like he'd been holding it for hours. "That went better than expected," he said. "Better?" Nora heard her voice rising. "He threatened me, listed your personal routines like a hit list, and basically said war is coming either way. How is that better?" "Because he showed his hand." Luca pulled out his phone, already typing. "He's scared, Nora. Genuinely scared. Which means either someone really is trying to frame him, or he's a better actor than I gave him credit for." "You think he was telling the truth about not ordering the hit?" "I think he made compelling points." Luca looked up from his phone. "And I think we need to consider the possibility that there's a third player in this game we haven't identified yet." Marcus turned from the front seat. "Boss, we should move. His people are still positioned around the restaurant." "Agreed. Take us home." Luca put his phone away and turned his full attention to Nora. "You did well in there." "Better than well. You didn't panic, didn't volunteer information, stayed calm under pressure. I wanted to throw up the entire time." "So did I. Welcome to high-stakes negotiation." His hand found hers again. "I'm sorry he threatened you. That was out of line, even for Renato." "What did he mean about promises breaking?" Luca was quiet for a long moment. "In my world, loyalty is currency. But it's also conditional. People pledge allegiance until a better offer comes along, or until the cost gets too high, or until someone puts a gun to their head and makes them choose." His grip tightened. "But I meant what I said. You're under my protection. That doesn't change based on Renato's games or anyone else's threats." The SUV wound through Miami's nighttime streets, heading back toward the mansion. Nora watched the city blur past, thinking about everything Renato had said, all the implications she was only beginning to understand. "Luca," she said quietly, "what happens if he is telling the truth? If someone else ordered that hit?" "Then we find them and deal with them." His voice was hard. "But first, I need to verify the information he gave us. If those gambling operations are real, if the intelligence is solid, it might support his story. And if it's a trap? Then we spring it carefully and make sure he regrets trying." Luca looked at her, and in the dim light of the SUV, she saw the weight he carried, the constant calculation of threats and responses. "This is the life, Nora. Every conversation is a negotiation. Every meeting is potential violence. Every alliance is temporary. You learn to read people, to anticipate moves, to always have a backup plan." "How do you live like that? Always expecting betrayal?" "You don't live. You survive." He said it matter-of-factly, without self-pity. "Until you find something worth actually living for." The words hung between them, loaded with meaning neither of them was quite ready to address. They arrived back at Blackwater House near midnight. Luca walked her to her room, his hand still resting on her lower back, and paused at her door. "Get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow's going to be complicated." "More complicated than having dinner with the man who tried to have you killed?" "Considerably," but he smiled when he said it. "Good night, Nora." "Good night, Luca." She watched him walk away down the hallway, surrounded by his security, carrying the weight of his empire on shoulders that seemed too human for such a burden. Then she went inside, locked the door, and finally let herself shake. The meeting replayed in her mind. Renato's cold assessment, his casual threats, the way he'd looked at her like she was a puzzle to solve or a tool to exploit. And Luca's response, the careful control, the strategic thinking that never stopped running. She was in so far over her head she couldn't even see the surface anymore. Her phone buzzed, a text from Luca. "You were incredible tonight. Thank you for trusting me." She stared at it for a long moment, then typed back. "Did we just have dinner with your potential murderer and negotiate a peace treaty? Welcome to Tuesday in my life. This is insane. Completely. But you're handling it better than most would." Nora set the phone down and moved to the windows, looking out at the dark ocean. Somewhere in that city, people were making moves, planning strategies, positioning pieces on a board she was only beginning to see. And she was one of those pieces now, whether she wanted to be or not. Sleep came slowly, interrupted by dreams of red laser sights and cold-eyed men in expensive suits, of threats wrapped in politeness and violence disguised as negotiation. She woke to pounding on her door and sunlight streaming through windows she'd forgotten to close. "Nora!" Marcus's voice, urgent and sharp. "We need to move now." She stumbled out of bed, heart racing. What's happening? The house is secure, but there's been an incident. Luca wants you in the safe room until we know more. She threw on clothes, jeans, and a sweatshirt from the closet Rosa had stocked, and opened the door to find Marcus and 2 other guards waiting. What kind of incident? One of our warehouses was hit overnight. 3 men dead, 2 million in product gone. Marcus was already moving, guiding her down the hallway at a brisk walk. Boss thinks it's retaliation for the meeting last night. Renato? Maybe, or whoever's really pulling the strings. They reached a section of the mansion Nora hadn't seen before, and Marcus pressed his palm to a biometric scanner. A hidden door slid open, revealing a staircase leading down. Safe room is climate-controlled, fully stocked. You'll be comfortable until we get the all-clear. Where's Luca? Handling the situation. He'll come to you when it's safe. The safe room turned out to be less a room and more a luxury bunker. Full kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, sitting area, all buried beneath what must have been tons of reinforced concrete. The walls were lined with monitors showing different views of the mansion and grounds. Marcus handed her a tablet. You can reach Luca through this if you need him, but unless it's an emergency, let him work, okay? She nodded, too overwhelmed to argue. Then she was alone, locked in a bunker beneath a mansion, while somewhere above her the man she'd saved from an assassin dealt with the consequences of violence she barely understood. Hours crawled past. Nora watched the monitors, seeing Marcus and other security personnel patrolling the grounds, seeing black SUVs coming and going, seeing the normal world continuing, oblivious to the war being waged in the shadows. Around noon, the tablet buzzed with an incoming call. Luca's face appeared on screen, and even through the video feed, she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. You okay down there? He asked. Bored and worried. What's happening? Exactly what I thought would happen. Someone hit one of our operations, made it look like Renato's style, left just enough evidence to point in his direction. Luca rubbed his face. It's a setup, Nora. Someone wants us to go to war. Did you tell Renato? I sent word. We'll see if he responds or if this escalates further. He paused. I'm sorry you're stuck down there, but until I know what we're dealing with, I can't risk having you exposed. I understand. And she did, even if she hated it. Luca, the men who died, were they your people? His expression darkened. Yes, good men. Men with families who trusted me to keep them safe. I'm sorry. So am I. He looked away from the camera. This is the cost, Nora. The price of the life I chose. Good people die because I'm not smart enough or fast enough to protect them. You can't protect everyone. I'm supposed to try. His voice was raw. That's the responsibility. That's the burden. They sat in silence for a moment, connected through screens and distance, sharing the weight of violence and loss. When can I come out? Nora asked finally. Few more hours. I want to make sure there are no secondary threats. He managed a tired smile. Try to relax, watch a movie or something. Rosa had the safe room stocked with entertainment options. Relaxing in a bunker while you deal with a potential gang war. Sure, sounds great. Never said my life was glamorous, but his eyes softened. Thank you for not panicking, for trusting the security protocols. It means more than you know. After he disconnected, Nora explored the safe room more thoroughly. Rosa had indeed stocked it well. Books, movies, games, enough supplies to last weeks if necessary. It was comfortable, secure, and absolutely suffocating. She was trapped again, protected, yes, but trapped. The hours dragged until finally, near sunset, the door unsealed and Marcus appeared. All clear. Boss wants to see you in his office. She followed him back through the mansion, noting the increased security presence, the tension in everyone's movements. Whatever had happened, it had rattled Luca's organization. Luca stood at his office windows, still in the same clothes from the morning, looking like he hadn't slept. When she entered, he turned, and she saw the darkness in his expression, a cold fury that made her breath catch. It was staged, he said without preamble. The warehouse hit. Renato's people didn't do it, but someone went to significant effort to make it look like they did. How do you know? Because Renato called me an hour ago, furious, claiming one of his shipments was also hit overnight, made to look like my people did it. Luca's hands clenched into fists.
Someone is playing us both, Nora, trying to spark a war that will destroy both our organizations. Who? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. He crossed to her, his intensity almost frightening. And when I do, they're going to wish they'd never heard the name DeSantis. Nora had never seen him like this. Cold, controlled rage barely contained beneath a civilized surface. This was the crime lord, the dangerous man who'd built an empire on fear and power. And despite everything, despite the fear and the chaos and the violence, she found herself stepping closer instead of backing away. "What do you need from me?" she asked. His expression shifted, surprise flickering across his face. "You're asking what I need? You protected me. You brought me into your home, kept me safe, trusted me with your world." She met his eyes directly. "So tell me what you need." For a long moment he just looked at her. Then, so quietly she almost didn't hear it. "I need you to stay, to not run when this gets worse. Because it's going to get worse, Nora. Before it gets better, it's going to get so much worse." "I'm not running," she said, and meant it. "Not now. Not until this is finished." Something in his expression cracked, the careful control slipping just enough to show the man beneath the crime lord. He reached up, his hand cupping her face with surprising gentleness. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met," he said softly, "or the most foolish." Probably both. And then, because the world was ending and nothing made sense anymore, she rose on her toes and kissed him. For one breathless moment, Luca froze. Then his arms came around her, pulling her close, and he kissed her back with an intensity that stole her breath and her sense and every rational thought she'd ever had. It was reckless and desperate and absolutely inevitable. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Luca rested his forehead against hers. "This is a terrible idea," he whispered. "I know. You should run from me, from all of this. I know that too. But you're not going to." "No." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "I'm not." His smile was sad and warm and real. "Then God help us both." The kiss changed everything and nothing at all. Luca still disappeared for hours to handle business Nora wasn't privy to, still came back looking exhausted and dangerous, still carried the weight of his empire on shoulders that seemed too human for the burden. But now when they passed in hallways, his hand would brush hers. Now when they sat across from each other at dinner, the air between them crackled with something that had nothing to do with crime wars and everything to do with the way his eyes lingered on her mouth. 3 days after the warehouse attack, Nora found herself in Luca's office again, this time at his request. He sat behind his desk surrounded by papers and laptop screens looking like he hadn't slept in 48 hours. "We found something," he said without preamble. "The attacks on both my warehouse and Renato's shipment, they were coordinated by the same crew. Small team, professional, no connection to either of our organizations." "Mercenaries?" "Exactly, which means someone with serious resources hired them to start a war." He pulled up security footage on one of his screens. "We traced them to a safe house in Coral Gables. Got eyes on the location now." Nora moved closer to look at the grainy feed showing a nondescript house in an upscale neighborhood. "What are you going to do?" "Visit them. Ask some pointed questions." His tone made it clear what kind of visit he meant. "But that's not why I called you here." He stood, moving around the desk to face her directly. Even exhausted, even wearing the strain of the past week on his face, he was striking, dark eyes that saw too much, strong hands that had held her with surprising gentleness, a mouth that had kissed her like she was air and he was drowning. "Renato called again this morning," Luca continued. "He wants another meeting. Says he has proof of who's orchestrating the attacks, but he'll only share it face to face." Nora felt her stomach drop. "You think it's a trap?" "I know it's a trap. The question is whether the bait is worth the risk." He moved closer, and she could smell his cologne mixed with exhaustion and stress. "He specifically asked that you come with me again. Said it proves good faith on both sides." "That's insane. Why would he want me there?" "Because you're proof I'm not playing games. A civilian witness makes it harder for either of us to try something violent." Luca's jaw tightened. "Or because he knows having you there makes me vulnerable. Makes me cautious in ways I wouldn't be otherwise." "So don't bring me. Tell him no." "I would. Except he's offering information we desperately need, and refusing makes me look weak, afraid. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. But I won't put you in danger if you're not comfortable. This is your choice, Nora, not mine. She leaned into his touch, feeling the warmth of his palm against her skin, the calluses that spoke of a life harder than expensive suits suggested. 3 weeks ago, she'd been a waitress barely surviving in Miami, invisible and powerless. Now she was standing in a crime lord's office, being asked to walk into potential violence because her presence meant something in a world she barely understood. When? She asked. Tomorrow night. Different location. His territory this time. A club in North Miami called Obsidian. A nightclub? One he owns. Public enough to discourage overt violence, private enough to have serious conversations. Luca's expression was grim. He's flexing, showing that he's comfortable on his own ground, that he's not afraid of me. Are you afraid of him? I'm cautious of anyone who's survived as long as Renato has in this business. Fear and respect look similar from the outside. He dropped his hand, stepping back. Think about it. You don't have to decide right now. But Nora had already decided. She'd made the choice when she kissed him in this same office, when she'd promised not to run when things got worse. And things were definitely worse. I'll go, she said. But Luca, if this goes wrong, if he tries something, then Marcus and Vincent will get you out, and I'll make sure Renato regrets every second of whatever he's planned. His voice went cold. I promise you that. The next evening, Rosa helped Nora into a dress that was more armor than clothing, deep emerald silk that hugged her curves and made her feel dangerous instead of afraid. Her hair was down in waves, her makeup darker than usual, and when she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. You look like you belong in his world, Rosa said quietly. That's good. That's what you need tonight. I don't belong in his world. I'm a waitress pretending to be something I'm not. You're a woman who saved a powerful man's life and earned his protection. In this world, that's currency. Rosa's eyes met hers in the mirror. Just remember, men like Renato Bellini see everyone as either assets or obstacles. Don't let him put you in the second category. The drive to Obsidian took them through neighborhoods that grew progressively rougher, where luxury gave way to necessity, and the gleam of downtown Miami faded into harder realities. The club itself was a converted warehouse, all industrial chic and pounding bass, with a line of beautiful people waiting behind velvet ropes. They bypassed the line entirely, Marcus and Vincent clearing a path through the crowd like Moses parting the Red Sea. Inside, the club was all darkness and strobe lights, bodies moving to music that felt like a physical force. But they didn't stop at the main floor. Instead, they were guided up a back staircase to a VIP level that overlooked the chaos below. Renato waited at a private table, surrounded by his own security, but dressed casually, expensive jeans and a black shirt that probably cost more than Nora's monthly rent used to be. He stood when he saw them, that same cold smile spreading across his face. Luca, Miss Vale, welcome to Obsidian. He gestured to the seats across from him. Please, sit. Can I offer you drinks? Information first, Luca said, remaining standing. You said you have proof of who's orchestrating the attacks. Direct as always. Renato's smile widened. I appreciate that. Yes, I have proof. But first, I need assurances that what I'm about to share stays between us. No police, no federal involvement, no outside interference. You want me to promise to handle it internally. I want us to handle it together. Renato's expression turned serious. Because the person behind this? They're playing a much bigger game than either of us realized. Luca finally sat, and Nora followed his lead, hyper-aware of Marcus and Vincent positioning themselves at strategic points around the VIP section. The music from below was muffled up here, but she could still feel the bass thrumming through the floor, through her bones. Renato slid a tablet across the table. Luca picked it up, his expression darkening as he scrolled through whatever was displayed. When did you get this? He asked quietly. 2 days ago. One of my people in city government flagged it. Renato leaned back. Recognize the name? I recognize it. Luca's voice was tight with barely controlled fury. But I don't understand why he'd come after both of us. He has no stake in our territories. That we knew about. Renato accepted a drink from one of his men.
Turns out he's been quietly buying up property along the port for the past 18 months.
Dummy corporations, shell companies, all carefully hidden. If you and I destroy each other fighting over port operations, he swoops in and takes everything. Nora tried to follow the conversation, but the names and implications were moving too fast.
"Who are you talking about?" she asked.
Both men turned to look at her, and she saw Luca debate how much to tell her before apparently deciding on honesty. Antonio Vega. He runs operations in Fort Lauderdale, stays out of Miami politics, keeps his business quiet and clean.
Luca's jaw was tight.
Or so we thought. Apparently he's been planning a takeover for months, and we were too focused on each other to notice.
"Smart," Renato said with grudging admiration.
"Hire a crew to attack both of us, make it look like we're going after each other, sit back and watch us bleed resources while he positions himself to take over."
"So what do we do?" Nora heard herself ask.
"We?"
Renato's eyebrows rose. "My dear, this isn't your fight."
"She's under my protection," Luca said sharply, "which makes it her fight, whether you like it or not." Protective. How touching. But Renato's tone wasn't mocking anymore. "To answer your question, Miss Vale, we do what Vega didn't expect. We stop fighting each other and turn our attention to him." "An alliance," Luca said slowly. "A temporary one. Long enough to eliminate a common threat." Renato spread his hands. "After that, we can go back to our territorial disputes. But at least we'll be fighting each other, instead of dancing to Vega's tune." Luca was quiet for a long moment, studying the tablet, studying Renato's face, calculating angles Nora couldn't see. "What do you propose?" he finally asked. "Joint operation. My people and yours, coordinated strike on Vega's operations in Fort Lauderdale. We hit him hard enough that he understands Miami is off limits, that trying to play us against each other has consequences." Renato's smile was sharp. "And we do it publicly enough that everyone else thinking about making similar moves reconsiders. You want to make an example of him. I want to send a message. There's a difference." The music from below swelled, and through the windows overlooking the dance floor, Nora could see hundreds of people lost in the rhythm, in the moment, completely unaware of the violence being planned above their heads. "I need 24 hours, Luca said, "to verify this information, to confirm Vega's involvement, to plan the logistics." "Reasonable. But Luca," Renato leaned forward, "if you try to cut me out, if you make a move on Vega alone thinking you can take all the credit, all the territory, then you'll do what? Try to kill me again?" Luca's voice was cold. "We both know how well that worked out last time." Renato's expression hardened, but before he could respond, the lights in the VIP section flickered. Once, twice. Marcus moved instantly, his hand going inside his jacket. Vincent was already scanning the room, looking for threats. "What was that?" Nora asked, her voice tight. "Electrical issue," one of Renato's men said, but he looked uncertain. "Happens sometimes." The lights went out completely. Darkness swallowed the VIP section, broken only by emergency lighting and the strobes from the dance floor below. Nora felt Luca's hand find hers in the darkness, pulling her close. "Marcus?" His voice was calm but carried absolute authority. "On it, boss. Vincent, secure the exits." Nora's heart hammered against her ribs as her eyes adjusted to the dim light. She could hear movement around them, Renato's men taking positions, the bass from below still pounding like a war drum. Then the emergency lights went out too. Complete darkness. The kind that made you forget where you were, which way was up, what was real. "Everyone stay calm," Renato's voice came from somewhere nearby. "My people are..." Gunfire. The sound was shockingly loud even over the music. 3 rapid shots that came from somewhere below. Screaming erupted from the dance floor, the music cutting off abruptly, replaced by chaos and panic. "Move!" Marcus shouted, and suddenly Nora was being pulled through darkness, Luca's grip on her arm like iron. She stumbled, caught herself, kept moving as more gunfire erupted, this time closer, on their level. Emergency lighting flickered back on, dim and red, casting everything in hellish shadow. Nora caught a glimpse of Marcus ahead, gun drawn, Vincent covering their rear. Renato and his men were moving in the opposite direction, toward a different exit. "What's happening?" Nora gasped. "Ambush," Luca said grimly. "Someone knew we'd be here." They reached a service corridor, Marcus yanking open a door marked emergency exit only. An alarm started wailing, adding to the chaos. They pounded down metal stairs, Nora's heels ringing against the steps, her dress catching on railings. Behind them, more gunfire. Shouting. The sounds of pursuit. They burst out into an alley behind the club. The SUV was there, engine already running, the driver's door open and one of Luca's other men behind the wheel looking panicked. "Go, go, go!" Marcus shouted, throwing open the back door. Nora tumbled inside, Luca right behind her. Marcus dove into the front seat and the SUV was moving before the door was even closed, tires screaming as they accelerated out of the alley. Glass exploded. The rear window shattered inward, and Nora screamed as Luca covered her with his body, pressing her down into the seat. More gunfire, bullets punching through metal, the driver cursing and swerving. "Stay down!" Luca shouted over the chaos. "Marcus, return fire!" Marcus was already out the window, his weapon barking sharp responses to whoever was shooting at them. The SUV swerved hard right, and Nora felt Luca's weight shift, pinning her more firmly against the seat. "Vincent!" Marcus called into his radio. "Vincent, report!" Static. Then, "Hit. Got clipped in the shoulder, but I'm mobile. Making my own exit." "Renato's people?" "Don't know. Lost visual when the shooting started." The SUV turned again, this time onto a main road, joining traffic. The gunfire stopped. Marcus stayed at the window for another moment, scanning behind them, then pulled back inside. "I think we lost them," he said, breathing hard. "But we need to ditch this vehicle, too compromised." "Agreed." Luca finally lifted himself off Nora, his hands immediately going to her face, her shoulders, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt?" "Nora, look at me. Are you hurt?" "I'm fine, I'm okay." But she was shaking violently, adrenaline flooding her system. What the hell just happened? Vega. Luca's expression was murderous. He knew we were meeting with Renato, knew we'd figured out his involvement. He decided to eliminate the problem before we could retaliate. "That was a professional hit," Marcus said from the front. Multiple shooters, coordinated timing, inside knowledge of the club's layout. They weren't trying to scare us. They were trying to kill us. The driver turned down a side street, then another, putting distance between them and Obsidian. Nora could hear sirens in the distance, police responding to the shooting. "Where's Vincent?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Making his way to the backup rendezvous point. He'll be fine." But Luca's jaw was tight. "Marcus, call Lorenzo. Tell him to activate Protocol 7. I want every resource we have focused on finding Vega in the next 2 hours." "Boss, you're bleeding." Luca looked down at his arm, seeming surprised to find blood soaking through his sleeve. Grazed. Not serious. "You got shot!" Nora's voice came out higher than she intended. "That's serious!" "It's a scratch. I've had worse." But he let her examine his arm, let her hand shake as she peeled back the torn fabric to reveal a long gouge along his bicep. Deep enough to bleed freely, but Marcus was right, just a graze. They switched vehicles twice over the next hour, each time moving to a different car waiting at predetermined locations. Luca made calls in Italian and English, his voice cold and controlled, issuing orders that sounded increasingly violent. Marcus coordinated with Vincent and the rest of their security team, piecing together what had happened. By the time they finally made it back to Blackwater House, Nora's hands had stopped shaking, but her mind was still spinning. She'd been in a nightclub ambush, had been shot at, had felt bullets tear through metal inches from where she sat. She'd almost died. Again. Rosa met them at the entrance with a first aid kit, tusking over Luca's arm and ushering them both inside. She cleaned and bandaged his wound with practiced efficiency while Nora sat on a nearby couch, feeling disconnected from her own body. "Vincent's secure," Marcus reported, entering the room. "Shoulder wound clean through. He'll need stitches, but nothing permanent. The rest of our people are accounted for." "Renato?" Luca asked. "His people got him out. 3 of his security team weren't so lucky. 2 dead, 1 critical. Casualties on the club floor too. At least 6 civilians caught in the crossfire." Marcus's expression was grim. Miami PD is going to have a lot of questions. "Let them ask. We weren't there." Luca stood, testing his bandaged arm. "What about Vega?" "Gone to ground. His properties in Fort Lauderdale are empty, his people scattered. He knew we'd come for him. Luca's hand clenched into a fist. Then we find him. I don't care how long it takes, how much it costs. We find him, and we make sure he understands what happens when you come after a DeSantis. Boss, with respect, we should wait. Plan this properly. Vega's expecting retaliation. He'll be protected, paranoid. Rushing in gets more of our people killed. Then we don't rush. We plan. We prepare. Oh, Luca's eyes were cold. But make no mistake, Marcus. Vega is a dead man. He just doesn't know it yet. Marcus nodded and left, pulling out his phone to make more calls. Rosa finished with Luca's bandage and quietly withdrew, leaving Nora and Luca alone in the room. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything that had happened, everything that had almost happened. You should have left me there, Nora said finally. When the shooting started, you should have run, saved yourself. That was never an option. Luca moved to sit beside her on the couch. Nora, you're under my protection. That means something. It means I'd rather take a bullet than let one reach you. That's insane. Your life is worth more than mine. You have people depending on you, an organization to run. My life is worth exactly as much as I say it is. He turned to face her fully. And right now, keeping you safe is worth everything else combined. The intensity in his voice made her breath catch. Luca, I'm falling for you, he said quietly. I know it's reckless. I know it complicates everything. I know you deserve better than a crime lord with more enemies than sense. But I'm falling for you anyway, and I need you to know that before this gets worse. Because it's going to get worse, Nora. Vega won't stop until one of us is dead. She stared at him, this dangerous man with gentle hands and dark eyes that saw too much, and felt something shift in her chest. I'm falling for you too, she whispered, and it terrifies me. Good. You should be terrified. This life, this world, it destroys good things. It takes what's beautiful and burns it down. His hand found hers. But I'm selfish enough to want you anyway. Selfish enough to ask you to stay even though leaving would be safer, smarter, better for you in every way. I already told you I'm not running. Even after tonight? Even after watching what this world really looks like when the Polish comes off? Nora thought about the gunfire, the screaming, the shattering glass. Thought about Luca covering her body with his own, choosing to protect her over protecting himself. Thought about the 3 weeks she'd spent in his world, watching him navigate impossible situations with strategic brilliance and unexpected compassion. Especially after tonight, she said, because you didn't hesitate. You didn't even think about it. You just protected me. I'll always protect you. He said it like a vow, no matter what it costs. They sat in silence for a moment, hands clasped, processing the violence and the fear and the realization that they were in this together now. Whatever this was, wherever it led. What happens next? Nora finally asked. Next, I find Vega. And when I do, I'm going to offer him a choice. Luca's voice went cold. Leave Miami forever and never come back. Or stay and discover exactly how much damage a DeSantis can do when you threaten what's his. And if he chooses to stay, then I'll make sure he regrets it for however long he has left. His eyes met hers. This is who I am, Nora. Not the man who has dinner with you, not the one who kisses you like you're the only good thing in his world. This, the violence, the threats, the willingness to destroy anyone who comes for mine. Can you live with that? Can you live with me? It was the most honest question anyone had ever asked her. No prettying it up, no hiding the darkness, just brutal truth laid bare. Nora leaned forward and kissed him, tasting blood and adrenaline and desperation. When she pulled back, she saw her answer reflected in his eyes. I guess we're about to find out, she said. His smile was sharp and fierce and absolutely devastating. Then let's go to war. War didn't come with declarations or formal announcements. It came in the form of Luca vanishing into his office for 18-hour stretches, emerging only for coffee and strategic discussions with Lorenzo and Marcus. It came in the increased security around Blackwater House, in the tension that seemed to vibrate through every conversation, in the way Nora could feel violence gathering like a storm on the horizon. 3 days after the ambush at Obsidian, she found herself in Luca's office again, but this time she wasn't alone. Lorenzo sat in one of the chairs across from the desk, Marco leaned against the wall with his arms crossed, and Vincent, arm in a sling but otherwise looking alert, stood near the windows. The War Council, she'd started thinking of them. Vega's made a mistake, Luca said, spreading surveillance photos across his desk. He's planning something big, a press conference at the Port of Miami, scheduled for tomorrow at noon. He's announcing a major development project, legitimizing his takeover bid with public investment and city approval. Bold, Lorenzo observed, announcing his intentions in broad daylight with cameras everywhere. Either he's supremely confident or supremely stupid. He thinks we won't touch him in public, Marco said, that our hands are tied by witnesses and law enforcement presence. He's right, Luca said quietly. We can't touch him, not physically, not with violence. His eyes shifted to Nora, and she saw something calculating in his expression. But we can destroy him in other ways. What are you thinking? She asked. I'm thinking Vega's entire strategy relies on appearing legitimate, on transitioning from criminal operations to legitimate business ventures, on being accepted by Miami's political and business elite. Luca tapped one of the photos. What if we prove he's anything but legitimate? What if we expose exactly who and what he is in front of everyone he's trying to impress? You want to out him as a criminal at his own press conference, Vincent said slowly. That's risky. If we get it wrong, if we can't prove it, we won't get it wrong. And we can prove it. Luca pulled up files on his laptop. Renato's people provided documentation of Vega's shell companies, his money laundering operations, his connections to violence. Combined with what we've gathered over the past 3 days, we have enough to bury him. But how do we get that information out? Nora asked. It's not like we can just hand it to the press and expect them to run with it. They'll want sources, verification, which is where you come in. Luca's attention focused entirely on her. Vega doesn't know you, doesn't know your connection to me beyond seeing you at that first meeting with Renato. As far as he's concerned, you're just some woman who happened to be at the charity gala. Understanding dawned cold and sharp. You want me to go to his press conference. I want you to ask questions, pointed, specific questions based on information we provide. Questions that force him to either lie publicly or admit to criminal activity. Luca stood, moving around the desk. The press will be there, cameras will be rolling, and everything he says will be on record. If he admits even a fraction of what we know, it destroys his legitimacy. If he lies, we release the proof and destroy his credibility. That's brilliant, Marco said with grudging admiration. Use his own press conference against him. It's also dangerous, Lorenzo added, looking at Nora. Vega may not know your full connection to Luca, but he's paranoid. If he suspects you're working for us, if he feels cornered, he'll be surrounded by press and law enforcement, Luca interrupted. He can't make a move without exposing himself, and Nora won't be alone. We'll have people positioned throughout the crowd, security watching every angle. Nora felt her heart hammering. This was insane. Walking into a press conference, confronting a man who'd tried to have them all killed, asking questions designed to destroy him. It was reckless and dangerous and exactly the kind of plan that could go catastrophically wrong. What happens after? She asked quietly. After I ask these questions and he's exposed, he'll know I'm connected to you. He'll come for me. He won't get the chance. Luca's voice was iron. The moment that press conference ends, you're coming straight back here. And within 24 hours, Vega will have much bigger problems than you. What kind of problems? The kind that involve federal investigations, asset seizures, and every connection he has in Miami turning their backs on him. Luca's smile was cold. We're not just exposing him, Nora. We're destroying everything he's built. His business ventures, his political connections, his reputation, all of it gone because he was stupid enough to come after us. She looked around the room at these men who'd built their lives on violence and strategy, who moved through a world of shadows and shifting loyalties. Then she looked at Luca, at the man who'd protected her, trusted her, fallen for her despite every reason not to. Tell me what questions to ask, she said. The plan came together with military precision over the next 20 hours. Nora memorized names, dates, shell companies, connections between Vega's criminal operations and his supposed legitimate ventures. Lorenzo coached her on how to frame questions to sound like genuine press inquiry rather than accusation. Marco worked with their media contacts to ensure the right reporters would be at the press conference, the ones who'd dig deeper into any story that promised scandal. And Luca watched over all of it,
with the focused intensity of a general preparing for battle, his hand finding hers in quiet moments, his eyes carrying promises he didn't need to speak aloud. The morning of the press conference arrived bright and warm, typical Miami sunshine that felt obscene given what they were about to do. Rosa helped Nora dress in professional attire, gray slacks and a crisp white blouse, minimal jewelry, her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She looked like a young professional, maybe a journalist or city employee, completely unremarkable. Perfect camouflage. "Remember," Luca said as they stood in the foyer, "you don't have to do this. Say the word right now, and we find another way." "There is no other way. Not one that works this cleanly." Nora straightened her collar, checked her phone to make sure she had the Notes app with all her questions loaded. "Besides, I'm tired of hiding, tired of being the victim who needs protecting. Maybe it's time I protected you for a change." His expression softened. "You've been protecting me since the moment you saw that laser sight. Then let me finish the job." He kissed her then, in front of Marcus and Vincent and Rosa, kissed her like she was going to war and might not come back. When he finally pulled away, his forehead rested against hers. "Come back to me," he whispered. "Always," she promised. The port of Miami was controlled chaos. News vans lined the parking areas, reporters checking equipment and rehearsing lead-ins. A temporary stage had been erected near one of the cargo terminals, backdrop banners proclaiming Vega's development company and their vision for Miami's economic future. Security personnel, Vega's people, Nora recognized the type now, stood at strategic positions, trying to look professional but radiating the same predatory awareness as Luca's team. She joined the crowd of reporters and city officials gathering in front of the stage, keeping her head down, her phone out like she was checking emails. Marcus was somewhere in the crowd, she knew, and Vincent, despite his injured shoulder. At least 6 other members of Luca's security were positioned around the perimeter, invisible but present. And Luca himself watched from a building a quarter-mile away, connected to her via the small wireless earpiece hidden beneath her hair. "I see you," his voice came through, steady and calm. "You're doing great. Just breathe and stick to the plan." A murmur went through the crowd. Antonio Vega had arrived, flanked by security and what looked like several city officials in expensive suits. He was younger than Nora expected, maybe 40, with the kind of polished good looks that came from expensive grooming and careful attention to image. He smiled and waved like a politician, working the crowd as he made his way to the stage. This was the man who'd tried to have them killed, who'd orchestrated attacks on 2 criminal organizations just to clear his path to power, who'd put bullets through the SUV while Luca covered her body with his own. Nora felt rage crystallize into focus. Vega took the podium, his smile wide and practiced. "Thank you all for coming today. I'm thrilled to announce a development that will transform Miami's economic landscape and create thousands of jobs for our community." He launched into his presentation, slides showing architectural renderings of luxury developments, statistics about economic impact, testimonials from business leaders. It was slick, professional, designed to make him look like a visionary rather than a criminal. Nora waited, letting him build his narrative, letting him feel confident. Then the presentation ended and Vega opened the floor to questions. Hands shot up across the crowd. Vega pointed to a reporter from a local station, answered a softball question about construction timelines, pointed to another, discussed job creation. He was in his element, comfortable and controlled. Nora raised her hand. Vega's eyes swept past her, started to move on, then came back. Something flickered in his expression, recognition maybe, or suspicion, but he was committed now, cameras rolling, couldn't refuse without looking evasive. "Yes, you in the white blouse," he said. Nora's voice came out steady, professional. "Mr. Vega, your company, Vega Development Corporation, was only incorporated 8 months ago, yet you're announcing a multi-billion-dollar project. Can you explain how a startup company secured financing of this magnitude?" A slight pause. His smile tightened imperceptibly. "We have excellent investors and a strong business plan." "Can you name those investors?" "They prefer to remain private at this time." "Is one of those investors Coastal Holdings LLC?" Nora asked, reading from her notes. "Because, according to public records, Coastal Holdings is one of 12 shell companies traced to money laundering operations in Fort Lauderdale."
The crowd stirred. Reporters who'd been half paying attention suddenly focused. Cameras swung toward Vega, catching the way his expression hardened. "I don't know where you're getting your information, but that's completely false," he said, his voice losing some of its polish. "Coastal Holdings is a legitimate investment firm." "Then can you explain why 3 of Coastal Holdings' principal officers are currently under federal investigation for racketeering?" Nora pressed. "Or why transactions between Coastal Holdings and your development company coincide with shipments of illegal weapons through Port of Miami terminals you're now trying to acquire?" "Who are you?" Vega's mask was cracking. "What news organization do you represent?" "I represent the people of Miami who deserve to know who they're doing business with," Nora said, and she heard Luca's quiet approval through her earpiece. "I represent the families of 6 civilians who were shot 3 days ago at Obsidian nightclub during what police are calling a gang-related attack. An attack that multiple witnesses place you at the scene of, Mr. Vega." The crowd exploded. Reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing, security moving toward Nora. But she wasn't done. "I represent everyone who's tired of criminals hiding behind legitimate business ventures," she continued, her voice rising. "Everyone who's tired of violence and corruption being rewarded with development contracts and political access. So here's my final question, Mr. Vega. How many people had to die for you to stand at that podium today?" Vega's face had gone red with fury. "Security, remove this woman. On what grounds?" Another voice cut through the chaos. A reporter Nora recognized from Marco's briefing, one of their media contacts. "She's asking legitimate questions about public record information. Unless you have something to hide, Mr. Vega?" "I have nothing to hide." Vega's control was completely gone now. "This is a smear campaign orchestrated by my competitors." "Competitors like Luca DeSantis?" Nora asked. "The man who survived an assassination attempt at the Bellamy Hotel charity gala 4 weeks ago? An attempt that ballistics experts have now traced to weapons registered to one of your security personnel?" She was ad-libbing now, going beyond the script they'd prepared, but she could feel the momentum, could see Vega unraveling. "That's a lie!" Vega shouted. "I had nothing to do with—" He stopped, realizing his mistake. By denying specific involvement, he'd confirmed knowledge of the attempt. The reporters pounced, questions flying, cameras capturing every second of his meltdown. Through her earpiece, Luca's voice. "Perfect. Now get out of there. Marcus is moving to your position." Nora turned to leave, but Vega's voice stopped her. "You." His finger pointed directly at her, his expression murderous. "I know who you are. You're the waitress, the one who saved DeSantis. You're working for him." Every camera in the venue swung to capture Nora's face. She felt panic spike, felt the plan spiraling beyond their control, felt the weight of hundreds of eyes fixing on her. And then Marcus was there, his hand on her arm, guiding her through the crowd. Vincent appeared on her other side, and together they formed a protective barrier as they moved toward the parking area. Behind them, Vega was still shouting, his security trying to restore order, reporters pressing forward with questions that would haunt him for months. They'd done it. They'd destroyed him in front of everyone who mattered. But Nora had been exposed in the process, her face now connected to Luca's on every news feed in Miami. They made it to the SUV, doors slamming shut, tires squealing as they pulled away from the port. Nora's hands shook with adrenaline and fear, and something that might have been exhilaration. "That was incredible," Marcus said from the front seat. "You buried him." "I went off script," Nora managed. The assassination attempt question, that wasn't in the plan. "It was brilliant." Luca's voice came through her earpiece, and she realized he was still listening. "You saw the opening and took it. That's instinct, Nora. That's exactly what needed to happen." "But he identified me. Everyone knows I'm connected to you now." "I know. Which is why we're moving to phase 2 immediately." His voice hardened. "Marcus, take her straight to the house. Don't stop. Don't deviate. I'm heading to the federal building now." "The federal building?" Nora asked. "Luca, what are you—" "Trust me," he said. "I promised you Vega would have bigger problems than you. I'm making sure he gets them." The next 6 hours were the longest of Nora's life. She sat in Blackwater House watching news coverage of the press conference, watching her own face asking questions that had destroyed Antonio Vega's carefully constructed legitimacy. Every channel carried the story, local news, national networks, even international business channels picked it up. The narrative was devastating. Criminal attempting to go legitimate, exposed by brave citizen journalist. Vega's development deal was in shambles, his investors pulling out, city officials scrambling to distance themselves from the scandal. But there was more. Federal agents had raided 3 of Vega's properties in Fort Lauderdale, hauling away boxes of evidence. His bank accounts were frozen pending investigation. Associates who'd stood beside him at the press conference were suddenly unavailable for comment. Whatever Luca had done at the federal building, it was working. He returned near midnight, looking exhausted but satisfied. Nora met him in the foyer, and he pulled her into his arms without a word. "What did you do?" she asked against his chest. "I gave the FBI everything. Every piece of evidence we'd gathered on Vega, every connection to his criminal operations, every document Renato's people had provided." He pulled back to look at her. "And I offered to testify in exchange for immunity for anyone in my organization not directly involved in violent crimes." Nora's eyes widened. "You're cooperating with the feds?" "I'm transitioning my organization toward legitimacy, using Vega's attempted takeover as leverage to negotiate favorable terms." His expression was unreadable. "It's what you said you wanted, isn't it? For me to be better than what this world demands? Luca, if your people find out you're working with federal agents, they already know. I told them tonight, gave them a choice. Stay with me as we move toward legitimate business operations, or take a generous severance and find other employment." He moved to the windows overlooking the ocean. 12 of them left. The rest stayed, including Marcus, Vincent, and Lorenzo. "That's incredible," Nora whispered. "But what about Renato? What about the other organizations?" "Renato called an hour ago. He's furious that I cut a deal without including him, but he's also smart enough to recognize the writing on the wall. He'll either follow my lead or find himself on the wrong side of federal investigations himself." Luca turned back to face her. "The landscape is changing, Nora. What you did today, exposing Vega, forcing everything into the light, that's going to reshape how power works in Miami. I just asked questions. You just changed everything." He crossed to her, his hands cupping her face. "You walked into danger, stood in front of cameras, destroyed a man who tried to kill us both, and did it with nothing but truth and courage. Do you understand how rare that is? How powerful? I was terrified the entire time." "I know." "I could hear it in your breathing through the earpiece." His thumb brushed her cheekbone. "But you did it anyway. That's what makes you extraordinary." They stood in the foyer, the house quiet around them, and Nora felt the weight of the past month settle into clarity. She'd saved a stranger's life and been pulled into a world of violence and power. She'd been protected and threatened and caught between criminal organizations fighting for territory. She'd watched people die, survived assassination attempts, fallen for a crime lord with gentle hands and impossible choices. And through it all, she'd discovered something about herself she'd never known. She was stronger than survival required. Strong enough to fight back, to demand better, to change the trajectory of someone else's empire through nothing but honest questions and refusing to look away. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now?" Luca smiled, and it was warm and real and free of the weight he usually carried. "Now we rebuild. We turn criminal operations into legitimate businesses. We use the resources and connections I have to create something that doesn't require violence to sustain it. We prove that change is possible, even for people like me." "That sounds impossible." "So did surviving a sniper. So did destroying Vega. So did any of this." He kissed her forehead. "But we did it anyway." The next weeks unfolded with surprising speed. Federal investigations into Vega expanded to include his associates and connections, unraveling his entire network. He was arrested on multiple charges: money laundering, weapons trafficking, attempted murder. The evidence Luca had provided, combined with what Nora's questions had exposed, built a case that would keep Vega in prison for decades. Renato, reading the situation correctly, quietly began his own transition toward legitimate operations, following Luca's blueprint. The territorial disputes that had threatened to explode into war faded as both organizations found common ground in survival and adaptation. Luca's testimony to federal prosecutors focused on Vega's operations while carefully insulating his own organization's past activities. The immunity deal held protection in exchange for cooperation, a chance to rebuild without the weight of past crimes destroying future possibilities. And through it all, Nora stayed at Blackwater House, no longer a prisoner of circumstance, but a partner in transformation.
She helped Luca navigate the transition, using her outsider's perspective to identify opportunities for legitimate growth. She became his conscience and his counselor, the voice asking hard questions when decisions got murky. 2 months after the press conference, Luca announced the formation of DeSantis Enterprises, a holding company for legitimate business ventures in real estate, shipping logistics, and security services. The press release made no mention of his family's criminal history, but it didn't need to. Everyone in Miami knew who Luca DeSantis was, what he'd been, what he was trying to become. The announcement press conference was smaller than Vega's had been, more subdued. But Nora stood beside Luca at the podium, and when reporters asked about her role in the organization, he introduced her not as his girlfriend or his protection detail, but as his partner in building something better. That night, they sat on the terrace at Blackwater House, watching the sun set over the ocean, and Luca reached into his pocket. "I've been carrying this for 2 weeks," he said, pulling out a small box. "Waiting for the right moment. Then I realized there's no such thing as the right moment. There's just now, and what we choose to do with it." Nora's breath caught as he opened the box to reveal a ring. Simple, elegant, a single diamond that caught the fading light. "I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other 2 months. I know you deserve someone without my history, my complications, my enemies." His voice was steady, but his hand shook slightly. "But you're the best thing that's ever happened to me, Nora Vale. You saved my life, changed my path, made me believe I could be better than what I was born into. So I'm asking, will you marry me? Will you build this new life with me?" She looked at the ring, at the man offering it, at the ocean stretching endlessly before them. Thought about the waitress she'd been 2 months ago, invisible and powerless and barely surviving. Thought about the woman she'd become, strong enough to face down criminals, brave enough to demand truth, powerful enough to reshape a crime lord's empire. "Yes," she said, and watched his expression transform from hope to joy. "Yes, I'll marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, like it had been made for her. Like everything that had happened, the charity gala, the red laser sight, the desperate dance, the violence and fear and impossible choices had been leading to this moment. They married 3 months later in a small ceremony at Blackwater House, witnessed by Marcus and Vincent and Lorenzo, by Rosa, who cried despite her stern demeanor, by the family Luca had built from loyalty and trust rather than blood. Renato sent an expensive gift in his regards, a peace offering from one reformed criminal to another. The first year of DeSantis Enterprises was hard, expensive, filled with setbacks and skepticism from a business community that couldn't quite believe a former crime lord could go legitimate. But Luca navigated it with the same strategic brilliance he'd once used for criminal operations, and Nora stood beside him, asking the hard questions, demanding transparency, refusing to let old habits creep back into new ventures. They turned warehouses into distribution centers for legitimate goods. They converted money laundering operations into security, consulting for businesses looking to protect against the kind of crimes Luca had once profited from. They used his connections and her conscience to build something that created jobs instead of destroying lives. It wasn't perfect. There were missteps, compromises, moments when the line between legitimate and criminal blurred dangerously, but they navigated it together, and slowly, impossibly, it worked. 2 years after the night Nora had seen a red laser sight dancing across a stranger's forehead, she stood in the offices of DeSantis Enterprises, a gleaming building in downtown Miami, with her name on the door as Vice President of Operations, and looked at the city spread out below. Luca appeared behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How different everything is. How impossible this all seemed." She leaned back against him. "How I used to be invisible, and now I'm helping run a company that employs 300 people. You were never invisible. I saw you from the moment you grabbed my hand." His voice was warm with affection. "You just needed the right circumstances to see yourself clearly." "The right circumstances being nearly getting killed multiple times?" "Well, when you put it that way, it does sound dramatic." He turned her to face him. "But it was worth it. Every terrifying moment, every impossible choice, worth it to end up here with you." Nora looked at her husband, this man who'd been a crime lord and was now a businessman, who still carried darkness in his past but chose light in his present, who'd given up an empire built on fear to build one based on trust and transformation. "I love you," she said simply,
I love you too. He kissed her, and it was warm and safe and free of the desperate intensity that had marked their early days. Ready to go home? Ready. They left the office together, hands clasped, walking through a building they'd built from the ashes of Luca's old life. Outside, Miami's evening light sparkled across the bay, and somewhere in that city, people were making choices that would define their futures. Nora had made her choice that night at the Bellamy Hotel, when she'd seen death coming for a stranger and decided she couldn't live with doing nothing. And that single reckless choice had transformed her life, had saved a man who'd needed saving in more ways than one, had built a love strong enough to survive violence and fear and the weight of impossible circumstances. She'd been a waitress barely surviving in Miami, invisible and powerless and forgotten. Now she was Nora DeSantis, partner and wife and the woman who'd helped a crime lord become something better. And as they drove back to Blackwater House through the warm Miami night, Nora realized that the best stories, the ones worth telling, were never about the destination. They were about the moment you decided to step into the crosshairs, to grab a stranger's hand, to dance with danger and see where it led. They were about the split-second choices that changed everything. They were about finding courage you didn't know you had, and love you didn't know you needed, and strength that came from refusing to be a victim when the world demanded it. Her story had started with a red laser sight and a desperate dance. It ended with a transformed empire, a love that had survived the impossible, and the knowledge that sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was simply refuse to look away when someone needed saving, even if that someone was yourself.